Hi, my name is Grant Kramer, and I am a professor emeritus at the University of Nevada, Reno. Today, we'll be updating about the boron and magnesium deficiencies that I found in my vineyards and how I corrected them.
My Backyard Vineyard, Season 3, Episode 8, the boron treatments of boric acid, borax, and granubor. I'm sorry, I misspoke. I decided not to include magnesium in this video as the boron treatments themselves are a lengthy explanation. Boric acid is commonly used in hydroponic solutions. It is H3BO3 and is approximately 17.5% of pure boron. It can be applied to the soil, as I've done in previous experiments last year, or as a foliar spray, but the danger of foliar spray is to apply too much and get boron toxicity. The benefit of this treatment is that it has an immediate absorption of the boron to the plant. If you want more information on this treatment, see my previous video in Season 2, Episode 7 on boron deficiency. This treatment is an effective treatment that can supply boron to the plant very quickly. However, it is limited in how long that treatment will last, as shown in my vineyard, where I have had boron deficiency repeatedly show up. So it is a very labor-intensive treatment that requires many applications. And so I won't be discussing it further here, but considering two additional treatments that are more standard for boron treatments in a vineyard. One of those is borax. Borax is a white powdery substance known as disodium tetraborate decahydrate, and this easily dissolves in water. It has multiple purposes, including being used as a laundry booster, as in this box here, or as a hand soap, and as a boron fertilizer. It is immediately available in the soil, but is easily leached out of the soil with rain or irrigation waters. The other treatment is called Granubor. Granubor is sold by the same company, Borax, that sells Borax, but it is a uniform granular boron fertilizer, so it's not a powder, but it's in granules. And it's known as disodium tetraborate pentahydrate. So it's exactly the same as borax, except it has 5 waters instead of 10 waters. So it is a little more concentrated. It does dissolve in water easily, but more slowly because of the granular form, and therefore is more like a fertilizer in the soil, and that's why it's designed that way. It has 15% boron in it, and it acts like a long-term fertilizer as it releases boron into the soil in a slower fashion. So let's go through some calculations of what I did for my treatments. Borax is 11.3% boron, and according to my petiole analysis done earlier in the season, it should be applied at 1 pound of pure boron per acre to alleviate the boron deficiency in my vineyard. So 1 pound equals 453.592 grams, and 1 acre equals 43,560 square feet. So if we calculate out the amount I need to add to 1 square foot, it would be the 453.592 grams divided by the 43,560 square feet to give me a value of 0.0104 grams per square foot to add a pure boron. But since borax is only 11.3% boron, we need to divide that value by 0.113 to come up with a value of 0.092 grams. Now, this is too small to be able to measure out and apply to the vineyard. So I made up a concentrate of 40 grams borax per liter of water, which gives us that amount of about 0.94 grams of boron. 20 mils of this concentrate will give us 0.094 grams of boron, And I added this to 1 gallon of water and then irrigated the vines by applying the water to the vine basins, which are approximately 1 square feet. Now for the Grubor fertilizer calculations. We know that Grubor is 15% boron, and we know that it should be applied at 1 pound of pure boron per acre to alleviate the boron deficiency in my vineyard. We also know that 1 pound equals 453.592 grams, and an acre equals 43,560 square feet. So we come up with the same amount of pure boron needed as before at 0.0104 grams per square feet. And since it's a 15% boron concentration, we divide by 0.15 to come up with a value of 0.069 grams of Grubor to be added per square feet of the vineyard. Now, because of the fact that the Borax treatments was limited just to the basins, and it's hard to apply that liquid to the other parts of the vineyard in between the basins, the Grubor has the advantage that it can be spread in between the vineyard basins to the entire vineyard area to reach the roots in between those basins. So by calculation, we need 31.05 grams of Grubor for my right vineyard, which is equal to 450 square feet. And we need 12.28 grams of Grubor for the left vineyard, or 178 square feet. To look at this in a little bit more detail as to how much to apply, I weighed out 10 grams of Grubor, as shown here on the right, and that equals to about 2 teaspoons of Grubor, or approximately 200 granules. And yes, I did count all of the granules, which were variable sized, not exactly the same. So it's an approximation. Okay, so let's look at the treatments that I applied. I was nervous about boron toxicity, so I wanted to do a pre-trial first to be sure that I wasn't killing my vines with the boron treatment. So I applied the Borax treatment to 2 vines prior to doing a full application to the entire vineyard. I waited for several days and no symptoms showed up. In particular, I was looking for symptoms of necrosis along the margin of the leaves and the older leaves, which is where boron is transported from the roots to the shoots and accumulates in that margin of the leaf. After several days had passed, then I irrigated the entire row of 1 and 2 in the right vineyard with this liquid borax treatment. And I applied to the rest of the right vineyard and to the entire left vineyard Grubor granules at the calculated amounts that I mentioned before. However, I made sure that at least 2 granules were placed in each vine basin to be sure that the roots were getting some form of boron. And as I mentioned, the rest of the Grubor then was applied throughout the vineyard uniformly as calculated up by the amounts before. So let's look at the pros and cons of these 2 treatments. With Grubor, there are limited resources for purchasing of Grubor. I had a hard time finding it in any kind of local store. You need to find an agriculture supply store, and usually it's sold in 50-pound bags, and I don't need that much. So this is a bit of a problem. I was fortunate that I received a small container, 2 kilograms of Grubor as a trial to be able to test this on my vines. Grubor is definitely easier to apply to the surface by hand and not spreader in my small vineyard. On a larger acreage, I'm sure application by tractor would be a better solution. Grubor is easy to apply to the entire vineyard, not just the vine basins, whereas applying borax was more difficult to apply between the vine basins since it was in liquid form. Grubor has slow release granules, but only at the granule location, wherever that granule is, and they're far and few between. They're spread out a fair bit between the different parts of the vineyard. So The borons will dissolve slowly from the granule, but be limited to the movement of water, which carries that boron freely through the soil, either by irrigation or by rainfall to the deeper levels of the soil. Let's consider borax now. Borax, on the other hand, is readily available in the laundry sections of most hardware stores or even some grocery stores. Borax is very soluble in water, so its widespread dispersion of borax will occur into the soil, but it's limited to just where the basins are located, where the water is applied. It will penetrate into the deeper parts of the soil as the irrigation water carries that water by gravity into the deeper parts of the soil. One important note is that when I made up the borax concentrate, it kept coming out of solution and settling at the bottom of the bottle. So I had to continuously shake that boron to get it back into solution before taking out the 20 mils to apply to a gallon of water. So this is potentially a problem in mixing up the borax concentrate. There's definitely more effort in applying the boron in this manner as borax and then having to irrigate it in further afterwards. One disadvantage also is that the borax can wash out with the irrigation or rains, as boron is very soluble in the soil, and thus removing the boron away from your vineyard. And in my case, as the way I applied this borax just to the vine basins, it's not easily applied to all the vineyard areas, and therefore some of the roots may not be able to absorb the boron because they are not growing in areas where the boron was applied. So what are my boron treatment conclusions? Boron is a tricky element to manage. Too much and you have toxicity, too little and you have boron deficiency. The thresholds for these are very close to each other, which makes for a very narrow window for boron sufficiency. It's apparent that my boron deficiency is severe based on the symptoms that occurred from last year and this year, with the intervenal chlorosis and stunted growth last year, and now for the first time growing grapes or having grape clusters and seeing the abortion on the grape clusters. It's going to require me more treatments to apply boron to get a sufficient level of boron in my vines. Grubor, in my opinion, seems to be the best form of application for now. One, because it's designed to be a fertilizer, it takes less effort in applying it, and it has a longer lasting treatment effect than the other treatments such as boric acid or even borax. And we won't know that until next spring when I do a petiole analysis at flowering. I will be sure to make another boron treatment prior to flowering just to ensure that we have enough boron. And finally, it takes time to know your vineyard. It takes time for me to know my vineyard and the vineyard characteristics and how to manage those characteristics. So be patient.
Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, then please like it on my YouTube channel, where you'll find other interesting videos such as plant physiology, enology, winemaking, that's what enology is, viticulture, grape growing, and many more. Have a great day.